Welcome to DriverDTrains. Thanks for stopping by. I'm your host, Driver D. We're joined again today by our conductor and brakeman, Scratchy C. In our first video, I talked a little bit about the model railroading hobby and described some of my plans for this channel. I also mentioned that this channel features the DCC-EX, the 1-foot by 6-foot switching puzzle layout I built on a shelf that is my version of John Allen's famous TimeSaver layout. I'll get into more details about how I designed and operate the DCC-EX in future videos, but today I'd like to tell you a little bit about my own personal experiences in model railroading and the journey that brought me to this place. My journey in model railroading began at the age of 3 when I received a Lionel steam locomotive freight train set for Christmas. I don't know where my parents bought it and whether it was an official Lionel set or one of the many uncatalogued outfits the company produced for retailers. I imagine it was probably the latter, as Lionel was in the last days of its post-war era, its glory long past. But I still remember the smell of the burning smoke fluid and waiting for those puffs of smoke to start rising from the stack. When I was 7, I met a friend whose family had a large O-gauge layout that filled their entire den. It was built on benchwork and fully scenic, with buildings and landscape and trees. I watched in awe as my friend's older brother Scratch built a new structure out of balsa wood, as multiple trains ran around the layout. This is not my friend's layout, of course. This is the amazing 8,000 square foot layout at Kansas City's Union Station Model Train Gallery. But I imagine that to my 7-year-old eyes, this is what my friend's layout looked like. I had no illusions of achieving such a feat, but that Christmas I decided that I wanted a new train set. I received some resistance from my parents. "You already have a train set. Why do you want another?" I was only 7 years old, but I had already learned what all model railroaders know. You can never have too many trains. Christmas morning, I found a new Marx train set under the tree. While the Lionel had been a figure-8 set, the Marx set had some new things. These included a turnout with a track bumper at the end and a working log dump car. I was finally about to get a taste of industrial switching operations. The new set also came with a rudimentary passenger station platform and some telephone poles. I was on my way to a layout. Unfortunately, there wasn't really any place for me to put my layout. The small, post-war suburban house I lived in had no basement or attic. The detached garage in the backyard was full of stuff. And the bedroom I shared with my younger brother was too small. So when I wanted to play with my trains, I had to set them up in the living room, which meant that my layout was never set up for long. Frustrated by these limitations, and wanting a bit more realism in my model railroad, I decided to make a switch. I had seen the HO scale trains at my local toy store, and in the Christmas catalogs. And so, at the age of 9, just 2 years after getting my second O-gauge train set, I asked for a lifelike HO scale train set for Christmas. But this wasn't just a train set. It was an entire 4-foot by 6-foot layout package. The layout base was composed of 6 three-dimensional, pre-painted, 2-foot by 2-foot styrofoam sections held together with plastic clips. It featured a twice-around oval track plan with an overpass in one corner and a cutoff on the inside loop. The package included several model kits for buildings, including a station and a platform, a number of trees and bushes for vegetation, and ballasting material to make a dirt gravel road. It came with a Santa Fe F-unit locomotive and several freight cars, along with a Tyco AC/DC transformer. I assembled and decorated the layout, built the kits for the structures, and started running trains. I had a lot of fun with the layout for the next 2 years. Then my family moved to a new town, hundreds of miles away, and the layout was put into storage for a year. Eventually, we settled into a new home, and the layout moved into an unfinished attic space above the garage, accessed by a 10-foot drop-down ladder. Over time, I played with my trains less and less. I rediscovered my love of model trains after I moved away to college, when I walked into the local hardware store and found out that it had a hobby store in the basement that was full of trains. I had never been into a hobby store that specialized in model trains before, and was awestruck by the floor-to-ceiling shelves packed full of Athearn Blue Box and Roundhouse kits, multiple varieties of track, and all kinds of scenery-making materials. I bought an MRC Tech 2 transformer, some Athearn Blue Box locomotives, and some Atlas track, and started running my trains on the floor. I bought an Atlas book of track plans and began thinking about and planning for the layout that I would build. My senior year in college, I lived in a rented house with an attached 2-car garage. Neither of my roommates had a car, so I was free to use the space for a train layout. It was, and to this day remains, the first and only time as an adult that I have ever lived in a house with an attached garage, or a garage of any kind with electricity, where I could set up and run a model railroad. Over the course of a year, I designed and built a 5-foot by 10-foot HO scale layout in the middle of the garage. It was built on 1-inch by 3-inch framing with plywood splines for the track. It was constructed in 2 sections, sitting on milk crates. I got all of the track laid and ballasted and wired up the blocks and turnouts. In one corner, I constructed a large mountain and tunnel out of plaster cloth and constructed tunnel portals for the 2 tracks that ran through the mountain. Alas, that was as far as I ever got. After 1 year in the rental house, I packed up and moved downtown to a 1-room efficiency apartment in the big city. I put the partially completed layout into storage outdoors under the carport at a friend's apartment. To try and scratch my model railroading itch while living in the big city, I bought a Markland Z-gauge starter set, so I never progressed much beyond running the Markland trains around an oval loop on the table. After 2 years in the city, I packed up my things, retrieved the partially completed and now naturally weathered HO scale layout, and moved 100 miles away to a new city. I put the HO layout into storage, first at the apartment complex where I lived for a while, and then in the ramshackle detached garage at the house where I eventually settled. Always looking for some trains to play with, I bought a 9-volt Lego train set for the bedroom and an LGB G-scale garden railway set to put together in the backyard. But again, I never progressed much beyond running the trains around in a circle. Eventually, I put the trains away and moved on to other projects. After a decade away from the hobby, it was time to return when my first son was born. 15 years in storage, some of it outdoors, had not been kind to my partially completed HO scale layout. When it was time to demolish and replace the ramshackle building it was stored in, I salvaged what I could and disassembled the rest, and it was no more. So I returned to the hobby by retracing my steps backwards, first with Lego trains, and then an LGB garden scale set in the yard. Then with HO scale trains, first set up on the floor, and then on a 4-foot by 6-foot foam layout board as well. And finally, by the time my second son was born, with Lionel O-gauge trains, which still have the same smell of burning smoke fluid that I remember from when I was 3. When my younger son started kindergarten, we moved to a new house to be closer to the boys' school. At our old house, we had constructed a large bedroom and office that were perfect for setting up trains on the floor. The new house, while a tad bit larger, had much smaller rooms that were not conducive to train layouts. The bedroom furniture from the old house filled up 2 bedrooms in the new house, with barely room to walk. There was no basement, no attic, and no garage. All the HO, Lionel, and Lego trains were packed away in a closet under the stairs. And the 4x6 foam layout was stood on end in a corner of the enclosed patio, where it stands to this day, more than 10 years later, keeping company with a pair of skeletons who I imagine passed the time reminiscing about their days riding the rails. It started with spaceships. Not being able to find timely news and information about rocketry and spaceflight on regular news sites, I turned to YouTube in order to stay up to date.
Wait, is this what I think it is? My name is Felix and I'm your host for today's episode of What About It?
Welcome to Starbase Ping. This is your daily space and SpaceX news.
Let's start the updates with Falcon 9 launching from Space Launch Complex 40, carrying Arabsat Badr 8 satellite. This is liftoff.
And liftoff. Go, Falcon.
At some point, the YouTube algorithm decided that I might want to also watch videos about people building Lego spaceships. This led to videos about people building Lego cities and running Lego trains. Shortly after that, I started paying more attention to the model railroading videos the YouTube algorithm was sending my way, and I started thinking about getting some of my old trains out of storage from the closet. And so, after another decade away from the hobby, I was drawn back. My first thought was to try and build a layout running around the perimeter of the bedroom home office up by the ceiling. But I soon realized that the logistics for that would be impractical. And I didn't like to imagine what might happen if one of my trains ever derailed and fell off the track, crashing to the floor or on my head from that height. So I next turned to the idea of building a small shelf layout. Shelf layout is a term that can have several very different meanings in model railroading. In some cases, model railroaders use the term shelf layout to describe a layout built on narrow pieces of benchwork, sometimes with multiple levels or decks, running around the perimeter of a room or along a divider. In my case, I was looking to build a very small layout, about the size of a shelf that you might find in a bookcase or a small closet. It had to be something that I could set up and store away easily in case someone ever needed to use the bedroom. So I started searching the internet for information about small shelf layouts and watching YouTube videos on channels that featured small shelf layouts, some of which I shared in my previous video. My initial idea was to build the layout on a 4-foot by 8-inch piece of foam that I would cantilever off the windowsill in the bedroom home office. I would scenic the layout base, paint a backdrop, and run one of my DCC sound locomotives back and forth with a freight car or two. I wasn't looking to build a diorama. My interests and skills are not in diorama making. I wanted something where I could watch the train go back and forth, moving a car or two around for some purpose or other, while making train noises. Then I rediscovered John Allen's TimeSaver layout. I had both known about and completely forgotten John Allen's TimeSaver for decades. I am pretty certain I first learned about it when I was building my layout in college. 20 years later, I purchased a PDF collection of model railroader articles about it. Trying to figure out how it worked hurt my brain, and eventually I forgot about it. An influential American model railroader from the 1940s and into the post-war era, Allen was a pioneer in many different areas of the hobby. Allen was a professional photographer and contributed both photos and articles to several model railroad magazines for almost 30 years. Probably best known for his cavernous, gory and defeated railroad, the G&D, the story of the TimeSaver was the last article of Allen's published in Model Railroader magazine before Allen's sudden passing in 1973. Featured in the November 1972 issue of Model Railroader magazine, the TimeSaver is a switching puzzle layout. In a switching puzzle layout, the goal is to figure out how to move all the cars to the correct locations on the track, preferably as efficiently as possible. I like to think of them as the model railroad equivalent of the 15 puzzle. There are a variety of different types, but the two most well known are the Inglenook Sidings shunting puzzle, which reminds me of a ring stacking puzzle, and John Allen's TimeSaver. Allen first built the small, portable TimeSaver in 1966 to play as a game with friends and take with him to model railroading conventions. The goal is to move all the randomly placed cars to their randomly designated spots as quickly as possible. The speed of the locomotive is fixed. Only the direction can be changed, along with the turnouts that determine the locomotive's path across the layout. Within a few years of creating the TimeSaver, there were numerous copies and variations. Thousands of model railroaders have likely tried it since. You can find some of them here on YouTube. As I researched how to design my own shelf layout, I realized that what I wanted, a small layout where I could watch the train go back and forth, moving a car or two around with a purpose, while making train noises, sounded a lot like the TimeSaver. I decided that I would build my own version of a small switching puzzle layout, inspired by the TimeSaver, with a bit of Inglenook mixed in, but sized and arranged to fit the small space I had in mind. Made with commercially available track and suitable for the modern 50 to 60 foot rolling stock and the 4-axle GP switching locomotives I already owned. The D-Saver was born. In my next video, I'll take you through the various steps I took and the tools I used to design the D-Saver layout, including the rail modeler software I used to lay out the track plan and design the puzzle. I'll explain how the layout evolved and how I tested it, first on the computer, then with paper cutouts, and finally with track and trains on the floor. I'll also introduce you to my custom-designed D-Saver switching puzzle app, which I use to create and track the switch lists for the puzzles. In later videos, I'll show you how I control the layout and run my locomotives using DCC-EX, JMRI, and Y-Throttle apps on my phone and tablet. I'll also take you along on a few switching sessions so you can get a feel for the layout and how the puzzles work. The DCSaver layout and puzzle app are each still a work in progress, and I have numerous upgrades and additions planned. I'll be painting the layout and adding scenery, some signals, a backdrop, and some structures. I'll also be adding new features to the DCSaver puzzle app and adding some new locomotives and rolling stock. In addition, I will be upgrading the DCC-EX command station with new hardware and features. So if you'd like to see more, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next installment. Lastly, before I sign off, I'd like to highlight another one of the model railroaders here on YouTube who inspired me to create this channel. Gregory from Gregory's Model Trains 88. In 2017, Gregory made the difficult decision to tear down the model railroad that he had loved running for 9 years to build a new and improved layout. Through a series of a dozen videos, Gregory documented on his channel how he spent the next 3 years tirelessly building the layout of his dreams. Gregory's new 3-track, small-town, Americana-inspired, multi-level layout is located in Australia, the land down under. Gregory's message that you can achieve your dreams through hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance when you set your mind to it helped inspire me to create this channel. You can find a link to Gregory's channel in this video's description, along with links to the other YouTube channels and websites I referenced in this video. Well, Scratchy, are you ready to ride the rails? Okay then. Until next time. All aboard!